Okay class, we're back to disassembling the engine again. This is section 5. And on this section here, we're going to be removing the crankshaft. But before that, we got a couple of things we got to do. Alright, so we got the side cover off. We have the camshaft off. We have the flywheel off the other side. And the camshaft, when we pull that out, we got these cam followers here. And they just fall out. A lot of times they'd fall out on their own. Now, this is the exhaust side because it was closer to this side of the engine, and I'm going to put it in my little baggie that I have the exhaust stuff, and I've labeled it exhaust. Okay, and therefore I don't get it confused with the intake side. Now on this little engine here, size-wise, it doesn't matter intake or exhaust, but what does matter is the this one doesn't want to come out. What does matter, so if you get this problem here, it doesn't want to come out, what you can use from my little baggie, I'm going to take my push rod and I could push it out. Okay. These actually connect when they're inside the engine there, just like that. Now on this engine here, like I was saying before, length and such, not going to make a difference, but on an automotive engine, it's very specific. If these two parts here have been married together and they have thousands of kilometers where they've been married together and they're wearing against each other, it is crucial that these parts go back together because their surfaces are mated now. It matters so much that I can't even do this. This would not be allowed. Okay? But on these engines here, these engines don't have any kilometers on them. They're just run here in the shop for a few minutes and then shut off. Okay? So again, intake and exhaust, label. Next what we're going to do is we're going to remove the piston, and the piston is held in place with 2 bolts. And we can see the 2 bolts right here. They're the the connecting rod cap bolts. And I'm going to use the box end of my wrench. And I'm going to loosen both. A little tight. There you go, that's one. Oops. And you could use a ratchet if it fits. I like the way a wrench feels. I have more of an understanding of how things go back on. Now, in the instructions it talks about the oil dipper, and this is the oil dipper, and the oil dipper has to be pointing downwards so that it can dip into the oil. This cavity here is called a crankcase. This is filled up with oil here. Remember, we drained the oil in one of the first steps. And this dipper, what it does, as the engine rotates, it dips into the oil and then splashes it around. The oil gets splashed around inside the engine. That's how this engine is lubricated. On a car engine, automotive engine, the engine is lubricated with an oil pump. There's a pump in the crankcase, and it takes the oil from the bottom of the engine and forces it to all the necessary locations, such as the crankshaft, then the camshaft, and other items like the pistons and such. Okay, so we got this out of the way a little bit. There we got 1 bolt. There we got the other one. There's 2 small bolts. Alright, there we go. Now we got to take off the cap there. That's the bearing cap. And I'm going to push the piston up from the connecting rod. I'm going to push it right up. If you want to come over here, I'm going to push it right up the top there. Oh, it's catching my gasket. I got to remove my cylinder head gasket. It's catching my cylinder head gasket. I don't want to damage the piston rings. I'm just going to remove 3 of the 4 bolts, and the gasket will swing out of the way, hanging on the other bolts. Let's put these back in here so I know where they go. I don't want to forget later on. I have a bucket of bolts of extra parts. I don't want that. Okay, so I just push the piston up, and I remember that the location, you see the long piece here, it's facing down, and it mates perfectly with the bearing cap. Okay, and we're going to take that, we're going to put the bolts back in here so that we know where they belong as well. I'm not going to tighten them up, just have them there. Okay, and there's my piston, connecting rod, piston rings, the 3 rings, compression, 2 top compression rings, and the oil ring, wafer ring in the bottom. Okay, kind of neat. We got a wrist pin in the middle, so it balances it off. Alright, so we'll take that off to the side. Next, we're going to take the crankshaft. Now, the crankshaft will just pull out. But if you remember, if you look on the other side of the crankshaft here, I put that nut on there. If I just go ahead and pull that crankshaft right out, what's going to happen is I'm going to damage the seal. So for this project here, we'll just leave the crankshaft right where it is, but it literally just pulls right out. There's nothing really holding it in place now, and we'll just leave it be. Okay, so the last disassembly procedure is disassembling the cylinder head. We have the valves there, and we'll just go ahead and remove one of the 2 valves because they're identical, and how to remove them, but they're not identical in intake versus exhaust. One is larger, and I'll let your teacher ask you that question. Anyway, to remove them, I simply just, you can see here there's a little bit of a space on the retainer. I can just push it forward towards that space. And it should just pop out. Rotate it, I guess, a little bit. Let's try the other way. There we go. So the intake one came out no problem. Alright, so we got a retainer. I got a spring. I have a rubber seal. Sometimes they're stuck on there, and then I have the valve. I can push the valve right out. Take a look here. The valve came right out, and it kind of looks like a nail, a big nail. All right, so that's the intake. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. And there we got the valve seat. This aluminum cylinder head, the seat would be made out of steel or stainless steel, because the aluminum, the size is soft metal. It won't handle the constant pounding against the valve hitting the seat if it's aluminum. So there's this insert there. And this hole here is called a port. Right? Congratulations, students. You have now fully disassembled a small engine. It's finishing section 5.